sales. The day you put out a hits, the day Diddy admits that he put the hit out, they got Pac killed, ah?
I think that Eminem guy might have been onto something.
He didn't just spell the word rapper and leave out a P, did he? Yep, RP, rest in peace, Biggie and Pac, both of y'all should be living. Yep, but I ain't trying to beef with him, cause he might put a hit on me like KVD. Get him.
Wait, no, he tripled down.
The domino effects of Tupac's murder, like facial tissue. Whose clock should I clean next? Plus, still he's in police saying cuss.
Obviously, the Diddy documentary, executive produced by 50, is out now. Everybody's talking about it. The internet is going crazy over it. But one of the biggest things that strikes me in these first 2 episodes is the coverage and the focus on the deaths of 2 of hip-hop's greatest icons. And one of the key portrayals is that during this East Coast, West Coast beef, who was right there stirring the pot? Who was right there in the middle of it all? And when you walk away from watching the documentary, you go, hang on. If it wasn't for Puff, Big and Pac would still be alive today. And honestly, I walked away from it with chills, right? I know part of the story. I know the testimony. I've seen some of the clips from Keefe Davis, right? Talking about the night that Pac was killed in Vegas. Obviously, Pac went after his nephew for jacking the chain of one of Pac's associates. So Pac was right there in the lobby. You have all that footage caught. And then later on, they drive around looking for Pac, looking to get revenge. They hear some girls yell out Pac's name. That's how they know that it's him. They see him. They see Suge driving the car, and they pull up. And obviously, we know the rest of the story from there. And throughout hip-hop history, there have been 2 key figures, 2 prominent players in the industry that have never had a nice thing to say about P. Diddy, that have always been firing shots, that have always been talking shit about Puff. One of them is obviously Eminem. And if you think it just started in the kill shot days, no, jump back to this.
Original bad boy on the case, covered your face, came into place, blowed and sprayed Puffy with mace.
And the other, of course, is Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, who throughout the years has constantly bashed and been wary of and skeptical of Diddy. He said it in multiple interviews like this one.
The nigga Puff was like, yeah, like first he was amping him to get style. Then he was like, so when we gonna get the chance to, to kick it, like we can just hang out, nigga. We gotta kick it.
This is
Puff.
Okay.
He telling me we gotta kick it and shit. And he was like, yo, why don't we like go shopping or some shit? I mean, like I pay for it. And I was like, what the fuck this nigga just said? I got the fuck away from him because I was like, this nigga just tell me he'd take me shopping.
And obviously, we all know 50 Cent was signed by Eminem and Dr. Dre. So you see the tie-in there. You see the common threads that they have uniting against Puff. But what we have to appreciate is that while Eminem and 50 Cent have had a huge, massive impact on hip-hop, so has Puff. Look at his roster. Look at his history. Go back to his Uptown Records days. Look at what he did for Jodeci. Look at the Mary J. Bliges. And then obviously Bad Boy and Biggie and Mace and the era that Bad Boy had and all the artists that they brought forth. There was a time when Bad Boy was at the top. Even Puff releasing his own music. I mean, Puff is a global icon. Puff is a huge name within hip-hop. He has done a lot within the industry, especially for New York, especially for putting on for black artists. And being able to scan back and look at that from a wider perspective and a wider lens and realizing, Puff has a dedicated fan base too. There's a lot of people who look up to Puff, right? So when Eminem was dropping his lines in Kill Shot, when 50 Cent was going around in interviews bashing Puff, sure, the stands loved it, the 50 Cent fans loved it, but there was also a camp and a large number of people on the internet and a number of media outlets and narratives that were bashing Shady, that were bashing 50. And it makes sense because Puff was also an iconic character. He was also loved. And for me, it's easy nowadays with all the court cases, all the negative media around Diddy to get on the hate Diddy train, right? But we have to appreciate that these 2 characters have been standing on business for years and years when it comes to Diddy. And they've never backed down. And I think for me, one of the greatest chess moves with this documentary that 50 did, right? Just knowing all the hype, knowing all the buzz, all the attention around the Diddy trials, around the Diddy cases, everything that's been going on, right? He took on this documentary. And for me, it says something that he spent the first 2 episodes really honing in on and really focusing on Tupac and Big. And knowing that this is a moment where there's going to be a lot of eyeballs on this, where there's going to be a lot of people watching this, knowing that there's also going to be a lot of people who are ignorant to the Tupac and Biggie deaths, and how Puff truly sits in the middle of it all. And Puff's jealousy of Pac. And Puff stirring the pot. Puff making Big stay when he was supposed to be scheduled to go to the UK, to go do interviews in the UK. Making Big stay, convincing Big that it was a good decision to fly out to LA, to start promoting his album, to go to parties, to walk around, amidst all the hate, amidst all the controversy, the East Coast, West Coast beef. That was all Puff's mechanics, Puff's doing, Puff pushing and convincing Big, and essentially leading the man to his death. And at the time, I would say it wasn't even an East Coast, West Coast rivalry that was tapped into. Puff, being a businessman, understanding enterprise, understanding how to divide and conquer, well, he knew there was a great opportunity here to take advantage of a gang rivalry, to take advantage of the tension and conflict between the Bloods and the Crips. Tupac, obviously, always in red. Same with Suge, representing the Bloods. And what did Puff do whenever they would go out to the West Coast? He would tap in with the Crips. And he would use a middleman, Eric Von Zip Martin, who was a well-known drug kingpin in NYC, well-connected, and he would tap in with Crip protection and always made sure that he was riding blue. But for me, what really struck me was Keefe D's testimony and talking about Puff putting a bounty on Pac's head, right? And it seemed to have started as, just like a throwaway kind of comment, Puff being frustrated with the Tupac hit him up diss, but really spiraling into something more serious and more sinister. And even after Pac was killed, Mark Curry talking about a very strange intro, because Puff liked to jump on his intros. He loved to steal limelight, but just something that felt out of place in a song that Mark was working on. And yet it makes sense now knowing the bounty and just knowing the discussions and who Puff was frustrated with and who he wanted to end.
Fuck with me, I drop $1 million on your head. Race you and your whole family. It's gonna start making y'all niggas disappear, man.
Everything that's done in the dark must come to light.
50 Cent, man. 50 Cent really playing chess here, but also the way in which the picture is painted, the way in which the background is set, that, Pac and Biggie were friends. They were originally close. Pac took Biggie on tour with him. Biggie was sleeping on Pac's couch. Pac was really mentoring Big. He really saw something in Big, and they had a lot of mutual respect for each other. And even during the boiling up of the East Coast, West Coast beef and rivalry, Big still didn't really want to respond to Pac. He still didn't really want to go after Pac. But who was there? Who was the devil on the shoulder? Who was the one really pulling the puppet strings of the East Coast, West Coast rivalry? It was Puff. And I think one of the interesting takeaways from it all is that sort of question was, does the East Coast, West Coast rivalry even exist if Diddy isn't there in the middle of it all? But anyways, I'm going off on tangents because I'm just trying to catch you guys up. If you haven't seen the documentary, I'm trying to give you kind of the background, because what I'm really getting at here is that 50, again, just knowing all the attention that this is getting, took this as an opportunity to really spread further awareness and to really shine light on the Tupac and Biggie situation. And obviously, I'm still going to have to put a caveat on this, that this is all allegedly. I'm just commenting on what the documentary portrays, what some of the witnesses have said. Obviously, rolling off of what Keefe D has said, what he has talked about in the past. I know that he's still waiting to go to court over this. He's trying to walk back some of his comments currently that he's been making publicly for years now. But for me, there's no smoke without fire. And it's not just like there's a one-off situation of one witness or one person talking about this. So many different events, so many different circumstances stack up. And there's one person who really the finger is pointed at. And let's say that, hey, maybe there wasn't an official bounty. There wasn't an unofficial financial transaction that happened or that was offered. At the end of the day, I think when you step back from the situation and you look at the evidence, one thing you can't deny is that Puff was a huge catalyst in pushing forward the Pac and Big rivalry, in pushing forward the tension between them and the conflict that ultimately led to their deaths. And also, we can't forget the big elephant in the room as well, when Pac went to New York and he was shot 5 times. And who was in the building at the time? Who knew that Pac was coming? Then Pac goes off to jail, starts hearing people talking, people muttering, pointing the finger at Bad Boy. And we all know what happened once he got out, teamed up with Suge, went back to the West Coast, and we got just amazing music from Pac, but we also got one of the greatest diss tracks of all time. But ultimately, leading to the death of two legends. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it. And then we go back and tie it back into Eminem. You know, you think about Eminem being on Dead Wrong, being on that posthumous Biggie track. Absolutely incredible. You know, you also think about Eminem helping to produce the Pac releases posthumously and his involvement in that as well. You know, Eminem has always shown love for hip-hop. And you could tell that this is something that's always struck a chord and struck a nerve with Eminem. Hence why he's always gone after Puff over the years. Hence why he's always spoken about it. And I'm glad he's finally getting his flowers for it. I'm glad 50 Cent is also getting his flowers for it. But it just goes to show, you know, the bravery of both of them. Just to really stand 10 toes down against any criticism, against any hate, to stand on their beliefs, to stand on what they believe in for something greater, for hip-hop.